Welcome back. Episode 2. So the pilot wasn't a one-off. It wasn't a one-shot. I'm gonna do more. What we talked about last time was it was grim, right? I think we need to be grim because the landscape is grim. A lot of billion dollar companies, market caps, a lot of people who have a disproportionate wealth to the 80-20 principle. Again, it's like one of my favorite principles, Pareto's principle. If it's not reflected in a natural number, it's not the real thing. It's not free market. Episode 2, we're going to go over, I guess, the human only app design philosophy. But this is the cold open. So let me just start off with a tale of two companies, right? And by two companies, I meant the company now and what they originally came on to do. Google in 1998 set out to organize all the world's information. In 2025, their business is ad targeting. They bought YouTube. They're mimicking TikTok's 7-second video format. They use your search results to optimize for your engagement. They give you free things that aren't really free. You can't even delete your emails anymore. They archive it. They want you to pay for storage for the archive, for the data set that you're giving them. Facebook, 2004, was to connect people with their friends and family. Better than MySpace, right? Facebook's 2025 business, they're selling your behavioral models to advertisers. Their product is designed for maximum session time. They want your screen time. They've reportedly stopped research that showed that their platform, when people got off their platform, they were happier. And they've knowingly built their product to depress people, right? To engage screen time, to keep people isolated, even though it's an app. And then they bought their competitors too. Apple, recently, privacy is a right. Apple, in practice, is a closed ecosystem. With a lot of vendor lock-in. They love to trap you. They like to, I don't know why, but like Apple users are always the ones that are making fun of Android or other open source platform. I don't know why. Like green techs, and people can fight me on this, but like I'll die on this hill. It's just the tribalism is insane, and they've done a good job at it. But they also fought right to repair legislation. I don't buy Apple products because they can't even fix them sometimes, and when they do, like, you got to go, and they're designed to break. They also have storage of your health data, your location, your browsing history, and it's centralized on their servers. I mean, it's not the fact that it's really private, it's that they have it and they'll keep it private from their competitor. Amazon, in 1995, 30 years ago, approximately 31 now, they start the online bookstore. Get you books. They're the largest cloud infrastructure. They have a lot of business with the U.S. government, a lot of vendor lock-in. They own the logistics market, have kind of disrupted traditional retail. They have their own advertising network. They have their own movie studio. They have their home surveillance products. They have a grocery store. Now they're delving into healthcare a little bit. They have vertical integrations into multiple sectors. If you've been on the Amazon.com website, it's chock full of dark UX practices, from subscription to how to cancel, even to returning your orders, how they've built certain things to be more Web 2.0 and other things to be very flashy, modern, minimalist, to kind of augment that process. Microsoft, original vision, they wanted PCs on every desk. Everyone had a personal computer. Microsoft Now, your operating system is, again, closed source. They want to collect telemetry on everything you do. They've kind of been jock riding open AI, Copilot integration, like mandatory. They're trying to build this AI product, scrape all your data. They're doing blatant training data. They feign open source. They do WSL. They do half measures. You still got to do a lot of detective work to get open source products or Linux working on your PC the same way it would just do directly on your hardware. These are the same companies. They have different incentives and all different outcomes. But one thing remains true about all of them is they do not care about you, the user, the human. This is humans only. Welcome back. I'm Eric Shoup. Last episode, we talked about how your attention is a commodity. This episode, we're going to talk about the specifics of what is going on and how AI also is being trained to serve the overlords, the stakeholders, and not you personally. But you can use these products. Again, that's just kind of a blanket statement. But when companies are using, modern LLM, they're going to do it in a way that's not conducive for even like labor markets, right? A lot of layoffs happening. They're looking for efficiencies, cutting costs, whatever. Today, I want to introduce you to a framework that I've worked on and I thought about. It's called the Humans Only App Development Principles. These are app principles that they don't have to be aspirational, right? They're just structured to provide how to build technology that doesn't intentionally exploit human neurobiology for profit. I say intentionally because there is some intention to actually use neurobiology for good. Again, and this is a slippery slope, but again, I leave that to the person to make that ethical decision. We're going to show you exactly how dark patterns work, why they work, and then how we build against them on first principle. So real quick, apps are engineered systems and they're not done so by accident. Metrics drive the behavior of the design, and what is good for users is generally not good for stakeholders unless the users are the stakeholder, right? Community driven products, usually there'll be a little more overlap. When stakeholders are a group of people that want more money and you're the commodity, usually the good is structurally opposed. What's good for them is not good for you. Exploitation system, right? So let's be clear about what we're analyzing, because this isn't user error. This isn't people lacking willpower. It's actually social and psychological engineering that's happening. A lot of really smart people are paid money to design products that will maximize profit. They're not accidentally addictive. They're deliberately designed to maximize engagement. Engagement is the name of the game. It's the metric that drives every decision. How you measure engagement, well, that would be time spent, frequency of return, the session length, notifications that you open, the posts that you share. Even if you're a business, there's algorithms optimized to use the product how they want the product to be used. And then they reward you by using it the way that they want you to use it. If that makes sense. Because they want some sort of content. And now with kind of LLMs and like data scraping on these platforms, I think they're looking for specific data sets, like Microsoft using LinkedIn. It rewards certain posts. How you provide content on YouTube, they reward certain YouTube providers, right? Even Spotify, that this podcast is going to be on. So these are metrics that get reported to your investors. These are metrics that then determine whether a product team can keep their jobs. Are they being good at being bad, essentially? Now, who pays for the app if it's free? Advertisers, right? Advertisers pay based on user attention. It's the fourth dimension. We've basically commoditized the fourth dimension. There was no more land or physical product we could capitalize on, so we use time. It's kind of the same way that government kind of hedges on the future, right? You have they're trying to say like 100-year bonds, right? You're basically creating a commodity on time, and it's super selfish, to be honest. It's really, a different topic. But more time in the app basically means more ad impressions, which means potential for more revenue, usually means more revenue. You get brainwashed. And so the math is really simple. Your attention equals dollars. The app job is to maximize your attention. Your job as the user is to just get value and move on, right? Like, you want to be on the platform. There needs to be a set stoppage and you need to just move on with it. These goals are not aligned with stakeholders. Again, they are a well-designed email app, for example, should make emails fast to process and let you leave, right? Okay. Most apps are built as engagement apps when they shouldn't even be built like that. So that's the problem statement. Everything else from that stems into the conflict that we have with dark patterns. So what is currently happening? What are the dark patterns that are in action? We'll go over the first one, variable reward that you get from the application, right? Some features pull to refresh, right? You could always just have state, right? But pull to refresh is, it basically allows you to get a dopamine flush of new, of what's brand new, right? The infinite scroll is also another UX design. You keep going. It's sticky, right? And then the algorithmic feeds. So things that they know you like, they push to you. So you keep scrolling. These all kind of create a dopamine rush, and they fire on uncertainty, not so much the actual outcome. For example, it's like the stopping algorithm. It gives unlimited exploration potential, and there's no reason to stop. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I want. So I'm going to keep looking. That's how it keeps you on. They throw in a couple ads here and there, and they're making money off. So we're going to start with the variable rewards. This is a foundation of engagement. You would open up X or Twitter back in the day, and you pull down, and this would sometimes create like new content, sometimes the same stuff. That unpredictability is probably intentional, but neurologically, like dopamine will fire when you predict the reward might happen. A gentleman, Wolfram Schultz, proved this in 2002. Uncertainty is the trigger, not the outcome itself. That's why gambling is such a shtick for some people, right? Like people just love gambling because the unsurety and the reward is the trigger and the dopamine rush. Slot machine, pull the lever, maybe you win, maybe you don't. Brain fires at the possibility, anticipation of the reward. Apps replicate slot machines. Apps are basically, pull to refresh is the slot machine trigger. TikTok's infinite feed of videos is a slot machine, right? Every time you see that 5-second video, moves on to the next, right? And slot machines were invented and known. Again, it's just kind of a different paradigm that's being reused. Really interesting. From a user's perspective, it's just like, I'm checking if I'm going to win. I think I'm going to win. I'm checking if something's new. I think I'm going to see something new. You're not consciously seeking the dopamine hit, but your brain is expecting it, and it fires on that uncertainty. So you're pulling again, boom. This isn't like a persuasion, right? It's neurochemistry that's targeted, intentional. The app doesn't need to show you something that's interesting every time. It just wants you to appear that way. It just wants it to be hard to predict. And so that variable makes it enticing, and that's what makes it sticky. And when it scales, the engagement team will measure that, and they'll see, what you're doing per session. What's your, often are you pulling? Each one of those things has telemetry, most likely, in these modern apps. And then they can do stuff like where they A/B test you to see what makes you pull the trigger more, what keeps you on longer. I mean, this is why you can't keep your phone down. It's not like laziness, or it's not like being ADD. It's just because your app is deliberately engineered to keep your dopamine system active. That is your reward system, or the variable reward system. The first thing, right? The next is like threat signaling. This is like red badges, notification sounds, something that's going wrong, message counts, kind of abrupt. And this is focusing on your amygdala's threat detection. It's almost faster than conscious thought. You see red, you see need to act. And so like this is where they check the box, like anxiety, right? User experience anxiety because they want to clear notifications. Like one of the first things I did, I think 3 years ago, was every time I got a new phone and installed any app, I removed notifications, especially on social media apps, right? Like, and this is kind of what we'll get into Thoughtful App Company, because we are going to weaponize taskmaster principles to keep you accountable for the better, right? Someone needs to call you and tell you to work out. Someone needs to motivate you to work out if it's for your good. Someone doesn't need to tell you to check your phone to see if someone you don't talk to all the time, or is like on your outer circle in the dumb bar, went to the beach, right? It's just not the same. So notifications, different mechanisms, these are the same principles. Like your red badge on your app icon, like notification sounds, haptics, right? Vibrations. These aren't helpful signals. These are like threat signals. So your amygdala is using like a threat detection to notice danger, to notice something that you should be anxious about. And it's, again, it's faster than unconscious thought because it has to work that way. So before your frontal cortex can even register what's happening, your amygdala is kind of already activated. So again, red badge, threat signal, your brain interprets that, hey, something's wrong, something needs your attention. You experience unease, anxiety. Only way to reduce this is to remove that signal, right? To remove that, whatever it is. Now, again, these aren't threat signals, are not necessarily bad design mechanics, right? Threats are a real thing. Like, for example, on our Tempo app, I wanted people to be able to use their own API key so they could use the app, because that app literally is a note taker. And so I want to make it so people can use it. So the AI in their products, but they just have to bring it on. Again, and it's not safe because it's stored in your browser. So if someone had physical access, it's not encrypted. So someone could pull that API key and use it. So that's a threat signal that is like, hey, like this is an issue. Just be warned, right? The fact that you have 5 notifications or 5 people have not even reached out to you. So here's the thing that's kind of even more frustrating is what I've noticed in Facebook and Instagram is they've expanded the circle of what's important for the app to notify you. For example, if a friend or someone you follow posts something, they'll tell you that they post something. So on LinkedIn's the same way. Basically, if it's 20 degrees of separation, they'll still tell you. If you have 3 connections away, they'll still tell you something. And it's not important, but it like creates the distress signal. And you're not getting rewarded with what's on the app, really. You're rewarded for checking the app, right? The notification creates that need and it checks if it's satisfied. So Kushlev and Dunn measured this directly in 2015. They compared a group that checked email freely versus a group that limited their checks to like 3 times a day. The limited check group had significantly lower scores. Not because they got fewer emails, because they reduced the frequency of the threat activation. But here's the thing, like apps don't actually send notifications because you need them, right? We knew this. They send them because they're checking behavior to keep the engagement up. Again, it's what's good for the stakeholders is not good for you. Take back that time. An engagement team measures like notification send rates, open rates. How often are you opening this app? The time that it takes to open. Then they optimize on that, right? Where do they lose you, right? Where can they keep more of your time? Is it a performance issue? They'll work on that performance issue. And they'll send notifications at times that you're most likely to check. They'll optimize for your schedule. Again, it's like surveillance. They'll use language really like, and this is kind of a larger issue, but like urgency language has been manipulated. They test them and the emojis, they'll test, how to call you by your name, right? To see what works. For me, notification permissions are the first thing I would turn off any app that's trying to capitalize your time. That's usually free apps, right? Email, like I have Proton Mail. I'll get my email and unsubscribe from what I don't want. And then everything in there is important. Threat signals, variable rewards. Now we're going into attention depletion. So this is the infinite scroll, no stopping cues. Netflix has this a little bit. Attention depletion. Okay. Attention depletion. There's no stopping cues. There's a continuous loop. Things go on forever. So what's happening? Prefrontal cortex, executive function, depletion, right? I lost 3 hours of my time and I didn't mean it. I was staring at a fucking wall. I didn't mean it. Use my language. The infinite scroll, right? This is kind of the ultimate times suck. I see my wife doing this all the time on Instagram. And I did it for a while. And then until the browser made it really hard to do this. This targets your ability to decide when to stop. And it really, because it's infinite, you never stop. Or you could potentially never stop. Your prefrontal cortex manages that decision-making impulse control and stopping behavior. But when content has a bottom, your brain can make that decision. But when it doesn't, it's harder to make that decision. Like, to get to the bottom, and it's kind of like, do I keep scrolling or do I stop? So it really removes that decision of when to stop. If you went to the bottom and you clicked a button, right, pagination, but you have a cue to either stop or keep going. So your prefrontal cortex never gets a natural stop cue. It just keeps running the continuous. Baumeister has some research that showed sustained. And again, I'm going to put these citations in the notes. But Baumeister research had sustained decision making will, showed that sustained decision making will deplete your mental resources, right? Each decision that you have costs cognitive energy, actual calories. And that energy eventually runs out and you become more impulsive and less intentional. So what Infinity Scroll does is it weaponizes this. It removes your ability to stop entirely. Your brain can't fatigue from deciding because you've never given the option to your brain to stop. Meanwhile, repetitive behavior like scroll, continuous loop, you'll maybe see something interesting. And then because you see it so often, it becomes automatic. I mean, they use comedy a lot in this instance, and comedians love these platforms because it gives, if they make a lot of good content, you can cycle through their content and similar comedians, right? And, they're making their bread. I can't hate that. But at the same time, it isn't a healthy thing for users. Screen time, I don't think. Laughing maybe, but hey, get a couple of these things in and then boom, kick you out, right? You don't have to give it hours of your life. Your basal ganglia, the habit forming system, then learns this pattern, right? Eventually you're scrolling without really conscious intention. There is no intention on why you're doing certain things. From your perspective, from a user's perspective, it's like, hey, I'm going to check on this for 5 minutes. And then it becomes like 3 hours, right? You're not really choosing to stay, and your attention system is depleted, and this habit system takes over, right? And then you create a habit of kind of being brain dead and consuming. So what does the engagement team measure here? Well, your session length, how deep you scroll, right? There's probably a depth scroll. There's a measure, how many cards, right? And then the time between your sessions, how often are you coming back? When are you re-upping? Then they optimize, right? So they make scroll physics feel really smooth. Friction disappears. There's no performance issues. They test the feed algorithms to make sure that what you're looking at, everything's going to hit with you and it's going to be really interesting to you. You're scrolling. They remove page breaks. So there's no natural pause. The only metric it optimizes is time spent, and that's the entire point. So again, this is attention depletion via infinite scroll, continuous loop, breaking down systems into a habit forming system. Next dark pattern, social comparison and the algorithms that they're feeding you. So social comparison really targets on concepts of FOMO, staying relevant, avoiding anxiety. Like, I need to know, right? And this is giving continuous amygdala activation. The algorithmic feeds target your status and the algorithm's job is really simple, right? It's maximize engagement again. So what content drives engagement? How can you stay on this app? Extreme content, aspirational content that triggers emotion, anger, envy, FOMO, right? Traveling content. As long as it's really cool, but it's triggering something in you that keeps you there. Maybe it's vicariously living through that experience. Your amygdala is basically going on threat detection. It's statusing threat as an evolutionary threat, to be honest. Like it feels like a real threat to you as an individual. And it's kind of a survival instinct, right? Like if you're excluded from success or social success or excluded from the tribe, and this is going back to like Dunbar's like anthropological like philosophies or studies, actually, not philosophy, but I think a little philosophical. But if you're excluded from the tribe, you're reducing your chance to survive. So your brain on social media apps, when it makes social comparisons, is a built-in um, trigger. Algorithms highlight in that fear in your brain, and so your brain will, contextualize that. It'll compare your life to like the highlights of their life, and it's not even like their average, right? Like I've been to some of these places, and like to get from place A to place B, like you really have to love life, man. You got to be like, you got to love like skipping and like just being sweaty and like just being outdoors. Like when you open a van, like you've been in a dingy van, it's going to stink, man. Maybe you're on this lake, and then really like they take photos where no one's there. And usually like these people, there's lots of people there. So it's a highlight that's fabricated, right? But your brain sees that and it's like, man, this life is so picturesque. It's like a movie, like that main character energy, that status anxiety circuits are activated then. So you engage, you like, you comment, you post, kind of like your own highlights or like to be relevant in that situation. And this is like a chronic activation. It's not occasional. It's like an all day thing. Like your threat response system and social comparison systems are just running continuously. Certain things might be living in your head rent free. Elevated cortisol, right? Reduced sleep, screen time, right? Immune impairment, like impingement, like your function, increased anxiety disorders from the cortisol. These are all measurable consequences of chronic threat activation. In military, where you're just kind of always, it's a similar threat response. It's not as adverse, right? Like, but like as wartime, but those threat activations are very real. And if you let yourself be affected by this, then you're essentially like you're exposing your body to like wartime conditions in the fact that your internal system, like very primal system, feels threatened. So what does the engagement team do? Well, they don't measure, for example, how did we help this user? Like they measure again, like the watch time. How are you sharing this? Are you commenting this? Are you returning? Like, are you returning to this content? The algorithm is going to optimize for those metrics, which means that it optimizes for content that triggers status anxiety and not content that really improves your life. You have variable rewards, the slot machine reward system, the threat signaling, right? The conscious like determination of, hey, this is something I need to take care of, anxiety, attention depletion, and habit forming. So, breaking down your willpower and creating bad habits essentially. And then the social comparison, algorithmic feeds. So appealing to like your lowest common denominator. Even creating a sense of want on the app that keeps you there and engaged. So there we go. All right. Now this specific topic goes into what I spent a year doing, like really focused on with Nielsen Norman Group, get my master's certification, was what were the laws of user experience and user interaction design, and how are they being violated? And I don't know if they talked about, I might have been on some classes, but I don't think they really talk about dark patterns as much on Nielsen Norman, because maybe that's what they wanted, commercial, right? So you can't really hate, but dark patterns, they were built there to deliberately invert established UX principles for evil, right? Designers really know what they're doing when it comes to intentionally violating users' rights and autonomy by understanding like how the laws work. Established UX principles, right, in design with how they interact with systems. So we'll start with Fitts law, right? Amazon does this really well. The time it takes to acquire like a target is by a function of distance and target size. This is actual a formula. right? And it was used in military, right? And what it is like you have a good example of this is if you try to delete your account and you try to not delete your account, they'll make one color, like really one button really big and colorful, and then they'll maybe do a gray button that's underlined that you don't even know is a button to like remove yourself. And then they'll prompt you again and again, not as like a safeguard, maybe as a safeguard, but like, they make it harder to exit and they make those targets harder to hit. So, what's the corollary here? Make this important decisions easy to find and trigger, right? Dark patterns will violate this to make exiting obviously hard, unsubscribing in like 3 clicks, moving through a whole process, maybe including a line, an automated caller line. Log out is hidden. They want to keep you in there, right? Log out's under a menu. It's not easy. Cancel subscription again. That could be like a phone call. That could be an email. Again, cancel button, always hard to find. Keep subscription button, always easy to find. Bright blue. It's like, hey, I can do this. Hey, are you sure? They always try to incentivize you to come back. Hey, by the way. So, I mean, if you're trying to get something that's on purposely cheap, you can always try to intentionally leave a product and then they'll give you discounts. So if you do want a discount, always try to leave that product and then come back and see if they'll send you an email or something. But again, this isn't by accident. The engagement of team A/B testing causes friction on the exit. They want to cause friction. They don't want you to leave. And they want to see where you exit and they want to make that hard better. They measure like the unsubscribe abandonment rate very closely. It's called churn. And they want to see that telemetry. So they optimize to keep you there by perverting Fitts' law for evil. Second is the visibility of your system, right? So users should always know what's happening. And so the corollary is make status clear and immediate, right? Dark patterns will violate this with kind of a dark status signal, red badges, right? This is what we talked about, like threat detection. Red badges that don't disappear until you've viewed everything, like onboarding that gives you, like that really juts you, pop-ups that say, hey, unread message notifications, right? The count might keep you anxious. Some people are really good, man. They can just look at a Gmail with 4,000, this is me, 4,000 unread emails. And then Google's just telling them, hey, you don't have enough. We can't keep your emails, whatever. So anyways, threat signaling kind of correlates to this a little bit, but visibility, a system status, right? They keep negative things very visible and maybe more positive things less visible. User control and freedom, right? Users should be able to undo actions and exit easily. So the dark patterns, they treat you like they always have defaults that maybe share your data, defaults to keep your notifications on, and then they hide settings, 2-3 menus away. Autoplay, auto subscribe, resubscribe. I mean, the resubscribe is not a bad thing per se, but because I'm seeing it from like a commercial standpoint, like you want people to kind of pay for that service. And this is something that I might want to actually fold in, is if people aren't using your service, maybe tell them. And then if people want to keep on your product, I mean, they can come back, right? But don't, again, I say that now and then I could regret it later. But I mean, that seems like a knowledgeable thing, like, or like a push, be like, hey, you haven't used, we'd like to see you. And then, yeah, I mean, at least let them know. I think because some companies will there's no notification system for inactivity. The defaults there are part of that interaction path. So removing your freedom to choose like your own interaction is that dark pattern here. And then one is just consistency and standards. So, if you follow platform conventions, users can predict behavior, but like dark patterns deliberately create inconsistency to make you uneasy when using the app, right? So back button exits the app on one screen, but maybe opens a menu on another, just enough to trap you there. So like swipe patterns can be different from like your operating system standards. So you have to like relearn behavior on this application, increases like cognitive load intentionally to kind of thwart whatever or kind of give you a one up. When you have a problem before it occurs, you can prevent that problem, right? The dark pattern would usually go the opposite way, right? It creates error conditions intentionally, right? It's pre-selected check boxes for your subscriptions that you don't want, and create confusing language and like the permissions dialogue. It can, be confirm buttons that are worded ambiguously, so you accidentally opt in. This is a pretty good one, right? Like they say usually when you click the button, it means, hey, this is what I want to get rid of. But some will actually have checkboxes all clicked in, and you're basically opting into their services. Like, hey, you can, because technically they're answering the mail, but it's not a true carryover from like other, systems. And so like they make it so you create errors or unknowingly create. And again, most smart people are angry people. They'll come back and they'll just be more pissed, right? But they don't care. It makes it sticky, makes it less um, likely. Recognition and recall, right? Minimizing your cognitive load by making options visible, right? So this is the pattern that you use. But now dark patterns will hide the option that you obviously want. Like the basic plan is under like 3 other upsell screens that you want to down, and you're going to want to downgrade. So you gotta be careful, because like they always point you to the package that they want, because it's a good, like, it's not too expensive, but it's usually an upsell on like basic, really basic mail essentials, whatever. Proton does this a little. I mean, like everybody does this who has paid service. You have those boxes, and they're gonna try to sell you the one. And they make it less obvious, like, hey, everyone likes this one, but actually, is that true? You don't know. Like, you just take their word for it. And they make privacy and settings invisible. Again, the same thing. The goal is to make like the right choice really hard to find, and then the extraction choice. Right? Flexibility and efficiency. So this is how you support both novice and expert users with shortcuts and customization. The dark patterns would remove shortcuts and force a single path, removing like keyboard shortcuts to leave an app, or single path like to premium tier, but multi-click to cancel, slow down expert users from keeping them in like a novice engagement loop. Every one of these violations is like intentional, right? Designers know these principles, and they're really imbibing your ability to get from point A to point B within the application. And it's a dark pattern like architecture as well, because again, the engagement metric is what's key here. It's the business model. So they'll violate good UX practices and turn them into things that, you know, you're using it intentionally in a bad way, or you're kind of going against that paradigm. Okay. So all this talk, and I'm finally getting to what I wanted to talk about, which is, how do we stop this? What are the morals for this human first framework for app design? All right, I'm going to get through this as quickly as possible. Design from user outcome has always been backward. And so we need to work forwards outside of an engagement metric basis. Obsidian does this really well. Obsidian, the note-taking app. I've heard about them, what they do. And if this is true, then this is kind of a paradigm I like. But they use like simple analytics. They don't actually know that much about their users. They don't know how many people are actively using it, especially like the offline version. Minimal data, right? And this is kind of like the local first take, but there's probably limited, if any, telemetry. And so because the reward system's not there, they don't care. If people use it, that's fine. They're not going to castrate the user and use this to like inshitify the platform or whatnot. So autonomy, capability, relatedness are all design goals, right? We wanted to make a moral choice, the easy choice, structurally every time. Okay. So how do you stop the current app design for bad, right? And I'm not saying that designers in these applications are necessarily bad people. They're just trying to keep their jobs, right? But by making the right choice and doing it by default architecturally, so what is the path forward for human first design. Okay. So right now, design flows, set engagement metric, design feature to hit metric, measure success by said metric. Dark patterns will follow naturally because this is what you're measuring for. Metric. So what are we building? I want to make sure people don't escape my app. I want to make sure they buy. I want to make sure they accidentally subscribe. They can kind of take it up with me later. So moral first design flow backward from this, right? We define what serves the user. We design that income and we make sure that the dark pattern is structurally impossible unless we are using it for the good of the user. I bring this up as any kind of work app or maybe workout app. Motivation is what we pay personal trainers for. So motivating, bugging, and motivation could be a little bit, grumpy person, but motivate. This is when the dark pattern can kind of emerge and for good. It's not really a dark pattern in that way. I don't know, getting their attention so they can do something. It's not, and again, we're not measuring anything on the app. So what is the need? Well, the need might be that we need to motivate our user, but we're not trying to serve our own purposes here. So how do you get the user's attention? And then you build from there. And then it makes dark patterns in that way almost impossible, right? Unless they're very specific to helping the user do something that they should do, but they don't want to do, right? They should do it. It's for their good. So I'm going to be specific. 3 psychological foundations for this autonomous behavior. And it's what self-determination theory calls basic needs. Okay. Then you need autonomy, the ability to make your own choices and a sense of control over your own life. You need competence, ability to accomplish goals, feeling effective and capable. Relatedness, connection to others, feeling a part of something meaningful. And dark patterns that we had described before, they kind of violate at least one of these 3. Variable rewards violates your autonomy. You're not choosing to keep scrolling because of the dopamine system rush, right? You've been hijacked. Notification threats violate your competence and your autonomy. You can't choose your own rhythm because anxiety is being forced on you. Infinite scroll violates autonomy and competence. You can't decide when you stop because you want to keep going, right? You feel like you're out of control. Social comparison violates your autonomy and relatedness, right? Because the algorithm determines your social reality, not what the authentic connection you're making is being held. You're competing with a curated highlight of people that aren't even like real people, right? It's just kind of a virtual offering of what could be or what they've made things appear. And it's really easy to spot these people on travel. I just keep going back to travel because that's usually on my algorithm. But like these people are like, they're not enjoying life. They're cultivating it's like the most backward thing. Anyways, so moral first design, this does the opposite, right? Human first design would do the opposite. It would support your autonomy, your competence, and your relate. What does that look like? Design for user determined rhythm, not app determined rhythm, right? So when we're restoring autonomy to a person, instead of like variable rewards to pull to refresh design, we're going to fetch content like once daily, right? And then we're going to show the user when the content arrives, right? It's just like the state is always there. If they come back to it, it'll be there when it's served up. And again, like the de facto where it's like we serve content reverse chronological orders kind of backwards too. So it's like I don't even know where we got that. Again, I heard Maggie Appleton talking about it on one of these podcasts, and that's kind of stuck with me. I was like, yeah, why do we serve everything in reverse chronological order? That might not be what's like really important. Like I get recent events, but that's only if you're like dealing in that kind of realm, like where time is essential, but time is not essential always. So we show the user new content once it arrives, let them know to choose to view it. I mean, create no uncertainty. Don't hijack like their dopamine, just restore the autonomy. Don't bring attention to the fact that certain things are being brought up, keep the state continually going. So instead of red badges, right? So this is, again, autonomy dealing with threat signals. Red badges that persist until they're cleared or designed. Now, again, I gave an example of this where it's like, hey, this might be a security risk because you're bringing your own API key. Here are the risks. Now you know. Just always know that, right? It's for their good. You're not telling them false information. This is actually like something a risk. Okay, so notification will show you like a new item. User marks it as red when they choose. The badge clears immediately. The user controls like their own status. So like you're essentially just kind of moving through and maybe concealing or choosing not to do notifications. Maybe you have like one notification or like a daily notification, right? So one idea I had was like, instead of having a number on it, you just have, hey, and it's kind of a neutral color. Instead of like red, it's just like stuff's in the mailbox, right? Like it could be a creative, like piece of mail's in there. Like, it's less obvious and, the user can go there because eventually if your product is something that they need, they'll have to go there anyway. And they'll batch it and they'll get over it and they'll leave. Okay. So how would we address an infinite scroll with no stopping queue, right? You could show a certain amount you could use pagination. You could use like a load more button. So it's interesting because if your performance is lower and you want to like keep certain things, like a load more button is actually not a bad idea, but it's also like not a bad idea for less stickiness. Because eventually like people get tired of like, I don't want to go through all this. User decides if they want to go like that extra page, right? It's a natural stopping point. Instead of algorithmic feeds that surface like the content that's meant to draw you in, and it's like a chronological feed by default, you could curate specific topics and they could be kind of rearranged in chronological, maybe by default or by like people, or, you could kind of choose how you organize like that, giving autonomy back to the user. And then the content could just appear as it is versus like what it thinks that might be interesting to you. But you can make the choice. Again, you have the autonomy to change how you view your viewing structure is versus being curated something and given ads in between. Again, creating autonomy for the user, right, is going to build a certain amount of control. And so then at least the user has the option within the system versus feeling like they don't have the option or being drilled to, be this automaton. So the next thing is, so we went through autonomy. The next thing is competence. So enabling competence. So in design, you want the users to accomplish their actual goal and know that they did it, right? This is like gamification, but with like a stopping point. Hey, you did your thing. Thank you. Here's your trophy, right? I don't think that's a bad thing. Gamification is great for like natural stickiness as long as it has an end, right? I think video games are that dopamine rush. So it's kind of like, hey, you did your thing for the day. Streaks are good. I think streaks are a positive for like, I think Duolingo, again, it is sticky, but I think it's positive because you're learning something. Duolingo might, you have the paid, but again, now you're paying for that. I think Duolingo has a good try hack me, Whoop. Like these things they give you streaks that make you feel good. It's like one minor application and it just shows you that you've been consistent. The idea of the email app, right? Instead of the email app feeling infinite in design, you could have like an inbox to move to 0. So you could mark things as like handled and you could show progress towards that completion within that scope, right? And then in that instance, your user feels more effective versus, an infinite scroll where it's a bunch of stuff. Maybe it's just like, hey, you have this view. It's like, hey, AI, show you all these things that you don't ever read. So maybe that's junk. Maybe you need to block it. So aggregation, right? Tools to help you actually filter what you want versus like, hey, here's a bunch of data for Google to scrape. Another way of enabling competence in a fitness app, the streak manipulation design, right? Actual progress towards a goal, historical data of improvements, So competence through like results. Again, I'm iffy on streaks. I like them personally. I don't think they're harmful. I think they're harmful if they encourage continuous bad habit. Does that make sense? It's like fitness is good, right? You can't really being, active is good. Certain elements that we've, not smoking too many cigarettes is good. Not taking drugs is good. Like a streak, right? Like the whole idea of like AA, having your coins, like these are metrics to measure that you've done something inertly good, like to help me, make your life longer. That's what is good to you. Lastly, relatedness. So how do we support relatedness? Designed for authentic connection, not algorithmic comparison, right? So what does this mean? Instead of an algorithm surfacing the extreme content for engagement, the design would be content from people users actually care about. So this is what I wish Facebook, and again, this is kind of the enshittification discussion. But Facebook and LinkedIn used to actually do this. Like I used to go on LinkedIn to see what my friends and former coworkers are doing. Now I see a lot of content that's really sensationalized, written like, and the people that are usually doing it selling some sort of product, and they're really good at getting. I would love to be that person, by the way. Like just sell this product, but it's not people you actually. And so either like, and then all this like in terms of autonomy, having a chronological or user curated order, right? So, and then not having comparison metrics. So I think that LinkedIn or not LinkedIn, Instagram did something where they took away likes. People were like furious because it's kind of like removing drugs from people, right? They're like, what the heck? They should have just kept it. I mean, they hit it somehow, but like counts, comments counts, just hiding things that make this a metric, like a measuring content, right? And then focus on like conversation, right? Not performance. It's not performative. It's about true conversation. So, follower counts drive your status, they drive anxiety, your design. Well, I got 7,000 followers. Wow, this guy's so cool. When I meet these people, though, man, are they cool? Sometimes, like, the more followers, the more like plastic people feel because they have to appeal to this demographic and they're doing things very asymmetrically to what is natural. So in design, right, the visibility is only to the user. So we share content for the audience of our choice. We don't create like leaderboards or like fabricate any kind of status signaling via metrics. Connection is based on actual relationship, not like reach. And, instead of group dynamic driven viral content, we have maybe like more grassroots small group communication by default. And then there can be an escalation to a wider audience intentionally, but not automatic. And, community norms are then, set by your members and not the algorithm. Reddit kind of does this pretty well. I mean, it's like an open sources ability and like anybody can kind of go in and it's not really, but at least it's centered around ideas. And that's why I think Reddit people definitely gravitate towards Reddit and why it's such a rich source. So again, showing you like the success criteria, relatedness through like shared values, relatedness through shared values. This isn't about like removing social features. It's about removing conditions that turn connection into a little extra curricular stuff, right? In building these apps, you want to make your exit effortless, right? So you want to design this so you losers, you want users can leave without friction. So exit is the canary in the coal mine. If leaving is hard, the product is extracting value, not serving it. A lot of founders are going to say, hey, I want vendor lock in. I don't want them to leave. But if you make it easy to leave another app to your app or vice versa, I mean, people might like that. It might make your product sticky just from principle. Instead of burying your like unsubscribe, right? You have an account setting where you can make data export really easy in multiple formats, right? And then they can bring it back in. Lastly, how do we measure what matters? The metrics In the previous dark design pattern, you figure out what the KPIs are and you put in the telemetry dockets, and then you build to optimize for that versus what's the change that needs to happen in the metrics that incentivizes different things, or do we measure it after the fact? We need to change what the incentive is. We need to change what the design is. Right now, your teams will measure engagement time, daily active users, session length, notification open rate, right? How long you are refreshing, different telemetry. These are all dark patterns. What do we want for like a human first metric? User goal completion. Are they doing what they need to set out to do? Are they doing what needs to happen to make them successful? What is their time to completion? The lower, the better, right? User satisfaction. Or do they like using this product? Would you recommend this product score? Do they recommend? Churn reason analysis, right? Why would they leave? Hey, why do you want to leave? Okay. Those are all metrics that have some good design to it, right? They're good hits, right? A meditation app, right? That measures session by length by adding flashy features and longer sessions to inflate that metric, right? A meditation app measured by user reports, feeling calmer, will help users meditate and they'll leave satisfied, right? These are different metrics, different incentives, and different designs. But you can't really dark pattern your way to a higher set. Meditation app that creates a longer session that keeps you in there longer by adding flashy features could defeat the purpose of meditation, right? And this is kind of, so I'll take tenure, for example. The problem statement from it was that I recently got underemployed now. So I need to find more employment. And I was looking for jobs. I was like, dude, I need to track this job because like I've seen people just track it in like an Excel spreadsheet. I was like, this is dumb. Why are we doing it this way? So I was like, all right, let me just create an application in the browser, local storage. And then tenure really took off. It was originally supposed to be like an IS focused psychology application where it was trying to help you guide you through like the RISEC and potential career paths, and then like cultural score, like maybe matching you to companies based on what your incentives were. But that's just like, then it was like, well, maybe it should be your career companion because like there's other parts of you in your career that you need to really focus on and might need help on. So then I started building out this app. When I was doing my research, I figured out, this is like winter. It's really slow during holidays for hiring, and it heats up in like March. So users should know that, right? What should you focus on, right? Oh, maybe you should focus on your network, right? So then we had different triggers, like depending on time, different kind of metrics there. And then we also had metrics related to what's a healthy amount of like cold applications, what's a healthy amount to get like for, a healthy pipeline. Now, referrals probably get you a lot quicker. So maybe focus on that, especially during the downtime. But then at some point you want to actually have like 8 to 10 within like that fit your career path, 80%. So then like, we want to keep users. So if they're not applying, the app can see that. And the app knows that user hasn't logged in for a while. And we're about to approach a week where they haven't applied to anything and they still don't have a job they haven't notified of. So in this way, like the outcome is to keep them accountable, to keep pushing through and focus. And so like, I think that's an instance where those notifications, they just need to like be more direct and like singular in their purpose. It's like kind of like how banks don't hit you with a bunch of notifications that are off. Banks will tell you, hey, someone's trying to buy something that costs a lot. Banks will tell you, hey, here's your, X, Y, and Z. Banks will tell you that your statement's available so you can look at all your stuff. Bank notifications, I think, are a good premise on how we should build app because like they curtail to what is important for the user to focus on, right? Lastly, how does Thoughtful App Company employ human first app principle? Okay, so top hits, right? Local first data architecture. Data lives on your device. There's no centralized behavioral graph or algorithm that you can target you, right? There's no comparative feeds. It's impossible, right? There's no status anxiety algorithms that can exist because we're not farming your data. It's like, and again, I keep going to Obsidian. Obsidian CEO is saying, doesn't even know how many people are really using the application. I think that's it. Like, that's where we get to a point where people should understand that free is not free, right? And we should pay people creating applications and ecosystems as a digital footprint, and hopefully they're doing it for the betterment of self. But what I do notice is that it's not like lucrative. There's no cost benefit at a high level. A local first is getting large, and it's getting a little more precedence. But I see why to large companies it's not ideal. It's basically thwarting all the stuff Adobe, Microsoft has accomplished through like SaaS pricing. If you go to SaaS conference that what's his name hosts, PayPal guy, PayPal Mafia, this is kind of like, why are you building it local first? But local first, I think principles are the first step into how we build good products, right? Ensuring offline, ensuring sync, ensuring it's on client side, privacy, data is yours. And then the application is yours in a way that you can keep that application for the long haul, and that you own it. It's like you bought a disk. The second one, phone as a server, right? So your notifications come. I imagine a world where notifications are voice haptics and text, and they're not visual red badges that are creating a threat response. We're not checking your behavior. Again, it's kind of like the bank. Banks have a good UX build around what they need to tell you about. Threats should be real threats, right? And you should be notified 3 different ways. So usually when you have an overdraft payment at good banks, some banks are, again, bad banks, discover, someone calls you, they tell you, and then you get an email and they say, hey, we're not overcharging you. Can you pay this soon? And then they call you. Right? That's a great omni-channel. And that's what I think. I think your phone is a computer that kind of goes with the idea of local first, but your phone is a computer that you should look at and check like once. Oh, I got to do that. Check, do your thing, set a reminder to do it. When you batch it, do everything on the app. Go look at all your jobs, look at your, do a workout, get a task list, hammer out these things. You can't design threat-based engagement without those threat signals. If you remove that and only leave true threats, I mean, that's where you get it. And again, I think the server as a phone concept, right, where it's kind of your computer and you're working, maybe you have like a haptics, or it's just, maybe they call you and you're like, oh yeah, I got to do that. Press 1 to schedule it. And then when you get back home and you want to sit in front of your computer for 30 minutes, you can hammer all your stuff out, get it done. You're actually done. You've done work. Boom. That's awesome. And that goes into the next thing I want to talk about, which is the omnichannel design, right? The same app works on SMS, email, phone call, in person. User can pick their channel. There's no one single channel. If they need to use certain tools on the app or a mobile app or on the computer, it basically, are you able to do it? No. Or when you get to it, it'll just remind you, right? So like being able to work in real space and not be tethered down to one object is what you can't design an infinite scroll if the interface is a phone call, right? Or a text message. Fourth, we want to use something called like an alpha omega app cycle. So an app will serve their purpose, then phase out. So this is like something that I think LinkedIn had a problem with, or any kind of recruiting platform, is that when you're trying to find a job, the job ends when the person gets hired, and then there's no need for the job app. So it can't be sticky. So how do they make it sticky? Well, they make it a job app, and then they make it a social networking, and then they also have shorts, and they have like, they're just kind of compiling everything so they can make it a one all app. But really some places in your life are going to end and they're not sticky, and you hope that you don't come back there. Hence why I created tenure. Hence why I want to create, just in case, small claims court. Like, you hopefully you don't need to use that. You use it once and that's done, and you're, one and done. Dating apps, right? Why are dating apps sticky? Why do they charge so much money? They're trying to extract value from cheap love. Like, it should really serve its purpose and then phase out. So being able to create these applications with a beginning, middle, and end, and then the ability to come back, is how we should build app cycles. Shouldn't expand. Shouldn't look like this Frankenstein of many amalgamation of products to keep a user centered and sticky. So no pressure to keep users engaged after your problem is solved. Maybe a little badge. Maybe you create like a little badge like, hey, found a job. Boom. Right. That's awesome. Community source funding, having no ad network paying for engagement metrics, no venture capital to demand growth curves. If you do have sponsors, I don't have a beef with taking money from large companies if they want to sell me a product that I can probably use, for example, like API call for your, what do you call it? For AI, right? For your LLM. I just use Cloud because that's easy. But if Google wants to give me money so I can build more cool products, and then people can still use, whatever I'm using, right? They can pay my extras and use my whatever AI call I use. But if they want to bring their own and, they want to sponsor me, I can create a vendors page and, hey, by the way, these are, you get, an affiliate. I don't have a problem with that because I get to dictate who the sponsors are. If I don't like them, if they don't align, if they demand something from me, I can just say no. I won't take their money. I can set those principles. You can't build those engagement metrics into your business model if your revenue doesn't depend on it, right? Being able to walk away. I'll take the extra money. The podcast, if you want to sponsor the podcast, that's fine. I'll take that money. But, after that contract expires, and the relationship's not equitable, if we in disagreeing, we'll just nullify that, right? The next thing is creating a new bundle marketplace. So being in the age of LLM coding is getting pretty crazy, is what I've been able to build. So ideas kind of take precedent. And so users can creating these beginning and ending apps, and then just having the ability for users to kind of drop those apps or come into those apps as they need, right? Like your dating app, hopefully you only use it like a couple times if that's what you want, unless that's what you want. App, use that instead. Job app, hopefully you're not using it a lot unless that's what you want. You want to move between. But again, like everything will always be there. The problem is like when the app shitifies and then users get locked in or they can't leave, right? That sucks. So retention has to be based on like value, not really friction. Not being able to trap users with dark patterns if like leaving is free. So principles should reject those dark patterns. Business model should be not to be profitable through that. When you're designing a product, right? Really think about your fellow user, your fellow human that you could be impacting if you're creating things that aren't actually helpful to them, and really just monetizing what you think is valuable in terms of like dollar amount. I think there's still money to be made without exploiting people. So this episode, we've just started the the Thoughtful App Company. I have 2 or 3 things that are coming in alpha soon, so watch out for that. Until next time, remember to not scam your fellow human when designing product. This is Humans Only. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed today's episode. We will be doing more hopefully in 2026, along with some releases on Thoughtful App Company. If you guys are willing to check it out, go to thoughtfulapp.co. That is thoughtfulapp.co, where you can find a couple of the app ideas and some more information. We're expecting to release the augment branch and release for point one for thoughtful apps, which will include Tempo, a ADHD Taskmaster app, as well as the Tenure Eternal Career Companion app. You can follow me on Blue Sky at shoop.dev. You can check me out on my website personally, www.shoop.dev, and feel free to reach out via those channels as more social media channels get released and we start doing some more pushes here. We'll get that up. But thank you again for listening and have a wonderful day. Humans only.